ready to begin our June 17th regular meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order. All 7 trustees present. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one nation, under God, one and indivisible. First item of business is election of officers, and on a personal note, I'd like to thank the board for its support in the last 3 years that I've served as president. I think that serving as a trustee is a big challenge for all of us, and serving as an officer is an added challenge, and I thank the board for tolerating me for 3 years. Ready for first nomination? We open the nominations?
I'd like to make a nomination.
You'd like to make a nomination? Okay.
I'd like to nominate John McLaughlin for president.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Yes, Ms. Cantu, I'd like to nominate you for president.
Thank you for the nomination. I hate to draw a vote because I have a lot of respect for Mr. McLaughlin. I have enjoyed serving as president, and I know that it's a difficult decision to stand back and let someone else take it over. I'm going to decline the nomination, and I think that if the next board president is as good as I think he can be, I think that we can have a good vote right now. Ready for the vote? All in favor? 7. All opposed? 0. And nominations are now open for vice president.
Ms. Cantu, I'd like to nominate you for vice president. Excuse me.
I accept the nomination.
Second.
Do we have another nomination? Call for the vote. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed, 0. Nominations are now open for secretary. Ms. Halsey,
I'd like to nominate Miguel Arredondo for secretary.
any other nominations? Miguel, any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Kathy for secretary.
Okay. The 2 nominees are Miguel Arredondo and Kathy. All in favor of Ms. Hanson, raise your hands. 4. All opposed?
We don't vote against. We only vote for.
Okay. So that took care.
Yeah, Trustee Hansen got the majority vote. So.
Okay, good. And I will move over so that Mr. McLaughlin can take over the seat.
Okay, I think we're ready. Oh, thanks. So I guess on a personal note, I'd like to thank former President Cantu for her service for the board. I thought at the time she came on, we were less of a team than we are today, and that we've had, while we're not perfect, we've had a period of greater calm and togetherness than I had experienced previously, and I think a lot of that was due to, or all of that, most of that was due to her leadership, and so I really appreciate the time she served, as well as the ambassador she was for the district, both as a former educator and everything else she brought to it. So I think the board was enriched from her time as president, and I'm honored to take the seat on a board where 5 of the current members have served in this role, and 6 of us have served in vice president or president. So literally any of the 7 of us could lead, and I appreciate the opportunity. So we're going to have the superintendent's report.
Mr. President, members of the board, thank you and welcome everybody. Not much to report, just if you want to know what's going on this summer, please check our website. We have a lot of activities going on throughout the district. MathWorks, we have baseball in the city representing, our kids are representing us really well. Lots of stuff going on, camps going on, Gear Up camps going on, Avid camps. Not a whole lot that's not going on. Even though we're in the middle of construction, we're still making it work. So, and then getting ready for our new elementary to open up. So that's it.
Okay. And now we'll enter the public forum. Just reminded that this is an opportunity for the public. You'll have 3 minutes. If you signed up in advance, we do observe certain protocol and have certain expectations for public comment, that they refrain from personal attacks and refrain from mentioning any staff member by name. So in that light, our first speaker is Susan Seaton.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent and Board of Trustees. My name is Susan Seaton, and I'm the president of the San Marcos Educators Association, which is affiliated with Texas State Teachers Association and the National Education Association. I wanted to speak to you tonight regarding salaries and compensation, and I do understand the place that the district is in, and I want you to know that you have our complete support in the decisions that you make. I would like you to keep in mind the project that we have been undertaking for several years on the fight for a living wage. I would like to make sure that our hourly employees continue to have their salaries raised in that fight for the 15, in the living wage. So while I do understand the budget deficit, I would like to ask you to please remember our paras, our hourly workers, our custodians, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers first when you're looking at where our money needs to be spent. It means the same to all of us, but it helps them get along in their day-to-day life. It helps them pay their bills more than what some of us do. So I am partnering with you. If you have any questions, we would be glad to speak with you, and we support you completely. We are partners in this district, so please remember all of our employees, but especially our hourly employees, when you're making these tough decisions in the financial climate that we have. And thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Seaton.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Rodrigo Amaya on leadership issues.
Good evening, board. I'm here today because the last time we were here, things got out of control. I witnessed the board have a citizen escorted out of the building here. Now, I have some questions about what happened that afternoon, that evening. One of the things I noticed is I want to know, what is a university police officer doing working a school board function? Don't y'all have a contract with the San Marcos PD? I asked that individual what he was doing, and he hesitated to respond. You know, are y'all paying twice for the same service? That's one of the questions. The other thing I want to talk about is, you know, when I came to that budget workshop y'all had up here with Ms. Griffith talking about stuff that I couldn't see up there, it would have been nice to have something in my hands that I could follow. You know, the other thing that bothered me a lot about that workshop was how many I don't knows she stood up here and responded every time people asked questions. There's like a $9.6 million deficit y'all were talking about that afternoon, that, you know, clearly shows me that we got some problems with the way the money's being handled up here at this board. Oh yeah, you know, the reason I bring up that incident with that citizen that was asked to leave was because he was quoting what a paper had written. Okay, I want to share with y'all one of the other things that I read about our superintendent, who called that incident where 1,100 students missed school because of that threat. He said it was a brief incident. However, lunch was canceled and students weren't fed. I don't know what definition of brief you're using, Mr. Superintendent, but when you do that and you deprive these children of their lunch, that's not a brief incident. That's what the paper said. Okay, I've also heard you say that now that your kids are going to be in the high school, you're going to be making a more regular appearance here. What happened to all kids meaning the same, no child left behind? All the kids should matter, not just our own children. I don't come up here and voice my concerns just for my children. I have kids in school here, but everything I say and come up here for is for all the kids, not just mine. So just want to let y'all know about that, it was very, very shameful what I witnessed, and I just want to let y'all know how I felt about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Dan Lyon. On school finances and performance.
Thank you. Good evening. It's good to be back in the snake den again. If you wish to follow along, Google SMCISD transparency and then click on business and finance / financial transparency - San Marcos CISD and then click on debt obligations. The first thing that I noticed is that the district's total debt is about $302 million, yet the principal is only $188 million. That means that from August 31st, 2017 till August 31st, 2042, the district must pay over $114 million in interest. Put another way, the district is paying just over $1.60 for every dollar it owed on August 31st, 2017, and it won't be fully paid for another 23 years. This is, of course, if we don't borrow another penny between now and the end of August 2042. The district will pay almost $32 million in interest on the just over $42 million that was borrowed for the new elementary school. That is over $1.73 for every borrowed dollar. It will almost surely cost more than that for our next school. Does anyone still wonder why I campaigned so hard against the bonds in 2013? They weren't, quote, for the children, unquote, unless we were talking about the children of the builders and the bankers. The superintendent's position is currently compensated at the rate of $221,728 per annum, based on 226 yearly work days. In addition, the district pays $17,975 for part of the superintendent's contribution to the Texas Teacher Retirement System and the TRS Care contribution. The district also pays up to $12,000 in travel expenses for business-related travel, as well as $2,400 for business-related cell phone usage. One might say that although this is expensive, you get what you pay for, do we? In addition to the 2 C's and 1 D we received in our latest evaluation, SchoolDigger.com rates the district 776 of 973 school districts in Texas. The district rates worse than almost 80% of the school districts in Texas. I've heard a trustee say that the standardized tests are unfair. What a ridiculous statement. They are standardized tests. If they are bad for our district, they are bad for the other districts as well. This ranking is the worst ranking of all since the rankings began in 2011. Contrary to what you have been told, we are not headed in the right direction financially or academically. On the financial front, we have been told that we face, quote, the perfect storm, unquote. My question is, when did we first notice this? We had known that recapture was looming for a long time and that we faced possible 2.5% cap for at least the last year. Why weren't budgetary corrections taken? In the words of one trustee, quote, we have a financial mess, unquote. And thank you very much for not interrupting me.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Lyon. Just as a general note, in addition, several of those quoted numbers, Dan, I would be happy to visit with you about afterwards, but regarding debt and debt service, I found to be untrue. But I'd be happy to visit with you after the meeting or on a break. We'll move on to Sam Brannon.
Greetings. Congratulations, John. I'm here to talk about the First Amendment. I hadn't been into San Marcos School Board meeting in a while, but I did see the video from last week, and quite honestly, I was appalled by it. Give you a little perspective where I'm coming from. I've been in Commissioner's Court twice where the county judge has tried to put me out for things that I was saying in there. Both times I stayed, and the constable didn't move to put me out. County judge violated my rights when he told him to. It would have been violated twice, but the constable didn't move. That happened in 2011, happened again in 2017. I personally was sued by the city of San Marcos for exercising my First Amendment rights. We won in court. They appealed. We won in appeals. You guys don't want to be in the business of infringing on the First Amendment. We can come down here and read the First Amendment from the U.S. Constitution. We can read it from the Bill of Rights from the Texas Constitution. Not permitted. If that doesn't do it, we can read from the Penal Code on official oppression. That might get some attention. In 2019, stopping somebody from speaking in a public meeting where they are not creating a disturbance, where they're just saying something you find offensive, is the wrong way to go. Don't take part in that business. Hopefully it won't happen again. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Fifth, we have Harvey Jenkins on board conduct.
School board members, my name is Harvey Jenkins. I live at 1420 Shealy Drive, San Marcos, Texas. Please forgive me. Due to the near death of my beloved dog, I got only 25 minutes worth of sleep last night, so I may be a little brash. I too watched that video where the San Marcos citizen was escorted out of this proceedings. I want to drop a little something on you. Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, 393 U.S. 503 from 1969. First Amendment rights of students in U.S. public schools, known as the Tinker Test, aka the Substantial Disruption Test. This is United States law. They went to U.S. court. The next time y'all go to infringe on somebody's First Amendment rights, don't. Thank you.
Okay, sixth we have Sarah Lee Underwood Myers on discipline, maybe? All right.
My name is Sarah Lee Underwood Myers. I reside at 1415 Harper Drive, and I'm here to let y'all know I regretfully did vote for that bond 5 years ago. It was new then, and I really regret that. I feel really we should have continued to use the high school facility at the university instead of building our own. So I was guilty of part of that, and I do regret that now. But I'm here tonight just to bring forth some issues I have on discipline. I feel that we have an elephant in the room, and I feel that if you're going to discipline your students, for instance, don't chew gum in class. I haven't been in school in 45 years, but I don't even know if that's an issue anymore. But if you have to discipline them for the little petty things and expect them to obey our authority, we need to do that on the board level as well. So we do have an elephant in the room, and I think it's unethical not to have that removed, and I just want to make that clear.
Thank you for your comment. Seventh and final speaker today, Lisa Marie Copoletta.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lisa Marie Copoletta, 1322 Belvin. I find this setup very problematic that you have a laptop here so the speaking public can't put their notes. I also find it problematic that the chair feels the need to debate a citizen after a citizen comment. As someone who attends city council and planning and zoning every single week, I've never seen that occur unless it was John Tomides. That's rude. The other thing I wanted to say is that I voted against that bond, and actually I warned the school district for years about that mold, the administration building, and they refused to listen. So imagine my shock when the reporters all started calling me, and I told them, yes, I've been warning them for years. I'm here today to read your school board policy issue 223-218, board members, vacancy, and removal from office. Reasons for removal. A board member may be removed for office for incompetency, which means, and item C says, unfitness or inability to promptly and seriously discharge official duties because of serious physical or mental defects that did not exist at the time of the election. Additionally, item board removal from office number 3 says very specifically intoxication on or off duty caused by drinking an alcoholic beverage, but not if it's caused by drinking an alcoholic beverage on the direction and prescription of a licensed physician. So in other words, unless you could literally get thrown out of office just for drinking. I'm not talking about drinking and peeing in your pants downtown, or I'm not talking about drinking and driving and falling asleep on a train track. I'm saying you could get thrown out of office just for drinking. I've got it right here. Now, you all and I all know if a teacher fell asleep drunk on a railroad tracks, they'd be, what would happen? They would be terminated, wouldn't they? Now, that's the example that we need to be setting for our kids, because those kids see that. They see examples, and to say you're a hometown boy and you represent this community and you piss yourself downtown and you fall asleep on a railroad track, that is not the kind of face of San Marcos that I'm an educator, just so you know. And if I engage in that sort of behavior as an educator, I would be terminated point blank. By the way, they would drag my name through the mud. But it seems that people are protecting certain individuals in the town by virtue of I don't know what. I don't know what it is, but it seems to me that the school board has now enabled a school board trustee not once but twice to continue with that behavior. I appreciate your time, and God bless San Marcos.
Thank you for your comment. We'll move into reports and information items. Construction update is the first item. Is that coming from scripted? Or Jane? All right.
Good afternoon, School Board, Mr. Cardona. I'm Jay Wesson, the Facilities and Construction Director for the district. I believe you have a report in your board book. On page 5 through, 29, something like that, probably. If you have any questions, we have the contractors here to help answer those, or myself or Ms. Griffith will on the reports that we put in there. So.
Ms. Halsey?
I was just wondering if we have set a date yet for the opening of the Rodriguez Elementary School?
The date? Well, it should be before school starts, or it's on schedule to be open.
It's on the chart.
On time.
An actual opening ceremony?
Oh, I don't believe we planned that.
My request would be that we establish that date, at least a tentative date for that as soon as possible, please.
Are there any further questions as to the construction update? Mr. Wesson, as to the high school, do we have an estimated delivery date at this point on that project?
For the stuff that's happening inside the building itself, I could let Mr. Weber, Mr. Wyman speak to that. But you come up here, please. This is Bill Wyman. He's with Weber Construction. But I can answer that, but he's in it every day out here, so I'll let him.
All the interior renovations are scheduled to be complete for the start of the new school year. Our building L, which is the CTE building, is scheduled to be complete right now in September. I believe it's the 29th.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Weston, is my understanding all the other projects are on schedule?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the 5 campus renovations are on schedule to be completed by the time school starts next year, and the CDC is, and that's the only ones that are in progress currently. So.
And remind me, what are we doing at Bowie? A citizen asked me yesterday at church, and I was.
At Bowie, we're adding 4 classrooms.
Okay, that's what I told him.
And renovating the library and several spaces for flex spaces, the art room. Mark here. Anyway, that's.
Okay, I told him.
Okay.
My understanding is we're adding classrooms.
We did add classrooms at Travis, Bowie, and Crockett.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wesson? Okay, thank you. Moving to a budget update from Ms. Griffith.
wanted to remind everybody that on June 24th at 5 o'clock in this room, we will have the public hearing to discuss the tax rate and the budget, if anyone wants to join at that time. Specifically, I wanted to point out the proposed tax rate. Do I need to? Sorry. The new proposed tax rate. So our maintenance, our M&O tax rate will decrease from $1.06 to 99 cents. Also, our debt service, which is our INS, will decrease from 0.3541 cents down to 32.41 cents. So that's a decrease of 7 cents off the M&O rate and a decrease of 3 cents off the INS rate for a total of 10 cents to our taxpayers. Also, we will be scheduling another defeasance, so that we'll be paying down some more debt to help defray the cost to the taxpayers on those interest payments. So we'll be doing another defeasance this year. Okay, I want to recap. I know we had a budget workshop on May 6th, and so on June 6th, so I wanted to kind of recap on what was discussed. We do have a new campus that's opening, which is Rodriguez Elementary, so we need to staff that elementary. Staffing a new elementary runs about $1.6 million, so I want y'all to keep that number in mind. We also have the impact of House Bill 3. So yes, it does move the district out of recapture. We do have new rollback rates for property owners. There is more money allocated to special population. There is a value compression of 2.5%, and we also have mandated rates. So just to recap, June 3rd, when you take House Bill 3 and you compare it against the current law and you look at the revenue, you will see that we do gain about $6 million in revenue over the two from what is current law and House Bill 3. So this does take us out of recapture. Okay, as far as expenditures are concerned, you can see that that we have done some cost saving measures in order to try and defray some costs as we know that we're moving forward. So as we look at that, some of the cost savings measures that we have taken, in personnel, we have defrayed about $805,000, and this is reoccurring. This would have gone on, but we have cut these costs, and I have listed those. Also that you'll see in there as we absorb 12 elementary teachers to new campuses. That's not in the 805, but remember if you when I brought those positions to the board, it was $1.6 million, and defraying the cost of these brought that down to about $975. So overall, there was a cost reduction of $805 going into the new year, even with opening a new school year. Department and campus changes, we were over to cut about $1 million out of that budget, and they were done by reducing department budgets by 10%. We did reduce the student device allocation by $250,000, and we reduced the bus replacement allocation by $200,000. So, also the general pay increases that I submitted to the board. Also on June 6th, I gave you another copy. There are 3 different scenarios that were presented to you, a low, a mid, and a high in each pay group, and then also the insurance premium increase. So as you look at those general pay increase options, if you look at the next page, I know this is hard, so if there's anybody in the audience who'd like a copy, please send me an email and I'll be glad to provide you a copy. And the board members, I gave you a copy for easier reading. So you have option 1, option 2, and option 3 that follows the general pay increase schedule that you see. So in option 1, you will see A for teachers, nurses, librarian, counselors. Option D for administrators, principals, assistant principals, and director. And then J for paraprofessionals, clerical, and manual trades. All 3 of these options do include the match of the $132,000. So we could also take an option. All these options here include the $132,000. So if you want it to be a part of the raise, or just leave it for the employee to take care of that additional $11, we can take that $132 off the number. Now for ease, I went ahead and highlighted in blue. That is basically your operating deficit. The one that's the net change in fund balance that's highlighted in yellow, that's because of the $1.3 million that we've committed to CDC and the drainage commitment that we've already made. So we're already committed to that. Everything else we have taken away from that budget. But that we just have to add that to the budget. So you're looking at operating. So when you're looking at the operating deficit, I'd like y'all to focus on the blue line for each one of those options. If y'all have any questions.
Yes, Ms. Villapando?
You mentioned reducing the budget for the buses and another thing, and I don't remember what the other thing is, I'm sorry.
The student devices, the one-to-one devices.
Buying the, on the buses, what is that amount?
It was 600,000 that we had that we're doing replacement. So every year we replace the oldest buses. It was on a 15-year schedule, and so each year we were replacing 6, and so now we'll move to about 4.
Okay, and how many buses does the 200,000 represent?
4. Each bus costs about $100,000.
Okay.
Ms. Halsey?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification from last week, and I appreciate the administration taking measures to absorb some of the costs. And is one of those positions the assistant principalship at the high school that's being absorbed?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I couldn't hear
We
you.
had one other previous when we reshifted earlier in the year.
Okay.
That's that position. That's not the one that just came up.
It's not the current?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to suggest that we consider absorbing the current position also. I'd like to have an assessment on where we're at with staffing. I know we have a new principal coming in, and I certainly want to make sure that she feels adequately supported, and I'd like her to have some voice in that. But I would like us to look at determining whether that is absolutely necessary to replace or not. I also, in terms of giving direction on where we take this budget, my preference as a single trustee would be, in terms of the general pay increases, to do the scenario A for teachers, nurses, librarians, counselors, which is 3.3% for 0 to 5, 4% for 6 and above. To do option D for administrators, which is the 2.6 to 3% per raise. And for paraprofessional, clerical, and manual trade, I'd like to see scenario L, which provides $1 an hour increase, and also the coverage of the insurance premium increase.
Ms. Costilla?
Following up on the buses, so if we had been on a schedule, so now we're going really off the schedule because we're reducing the number that can be. So is that going to impact the system the way, so for the following year, I think you said that every year we would be replacing 6 buses. So if we go forward next year with 4, so we're gonna be again to a system that sometimes we're gonna be in dire need of bus transportation.
We are going to look at some different options and bring some back, and we may, we've been tossing around the idea of maybe refurbishing some of the buses, maybe not taking them the ones that are 15 years old, but maybe looking at some that are around the 10-year mark, and instead of letting them get totally depleted, we'll do some to refurbish some of those buses. And so we're going to look at some different options to see what we can do, and we'll be bringing that back to you at a later time.
The current system that we have is that we buy the buses outright, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Did we not, at some point in time, look at the option, possibility of leasing this bus, at least?
I would love to do, I mean, the only way that you can do a lease option is kind of like, it's like borrowing the money. It's like doing a capital lease program. So you end up spending more because of the cost. So, but if there was, like they do for the White Fleet, which is where you can, like what Enterprise does, and I've told them many times if they do that with yellow buses, I'll be glad to join
I
in
was
with
just
them.
asking because I know that we had mentioned and talked about that before.
Not that I'm aware of, but we can look and see if there's something there.
Whatever is best for our system and for our school districts, especially in meeting the needs of those transportation needs to our students.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, President McLaughlin. First and foremost, Mrs. Griffith, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done in the formulation of this budget. I know at our last budget workshop and during that conversation, there were a lot of I don't knows, but that was no reflection of you or your department. It was the fact that we were asking you to understand state law that essentially had not gone into effect yet. So I thank you for not only providing me, additional information after that budget workshop, but your work deciphering what the state legislature has done to school finance. Similarly to Trustee Halsey, as an individual trustee, if the staff and the finance office is looking for direction from this board, I too would support option A for teachers, nurses, librarian, and counselors, option D for administrators, principals, assistant principals, and directors, and then option L for paraprofessionals, clerical, and manual trade employees, as well as option M of the additional $11 increase in employee health care costs. I'm not too sure where the conversation is going to go on our future agenda item in regards to a trustee finance committee, but to echo Ms. Halsey's sentiment about looking at current district staffing levels, and I know TASB has surveys and things that they do to see if we are overstaffed or understaffed in specific areas. Similarly, it's my understanding that we have 6 assistant principals at San Marcos High School, including the 1 vacancy. So if we can look at additional efficiencies somewhere when it comes to some of those administrative level positions, hopefully that's something that the soon-to-be formulated committee can look at and address. But other than that, again, Ms. Griffith, I thank you for your time and your effort on this budget.
I have a couple things, just maybe information requests for the next time this comes before us. On the paraprofessional clerical manual trade, it seems like in the past we had the scales themselves and we could determine the frequency of how many people were at those different points, and that would be helpful for me. I don't currently understand. I know we gave significant raises the last 2 years. I don't know what our current low pay rate is and how many employees are at that rate. But if we had that information, we might be able to do on the fly something maybe more nuanced than JK and L, a modification of one of them. But without that info, I for one trustee, wouldn't know where to start. So I'm pretty clear on the teachers. I think that's pretty much dictated to us by the legislation, and I understand the thought behind the administration numbers. But as to between, I guess, JK and L, some more information would be helpful for me.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Thank you, Ms. Griffith.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the consent agenda, which just contains a single item on approval of minutes for regular school board meeting on May 20th, 2019, and special called board meeting of June 3rd. First, were all trustees present for both, or do we need to split this out?
Please split it out. I wasn't here for the
Okay, so if you're going to make a motion, if you can take them one by one, the trustees that weren't present will have a chance to abstain. Ms. Hanson?
I move that we approve the board meeting minutes from May 20th, 2019.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the board meetings from May 20, 2019? 6, and opposed and abstaining, Mr. Arredondo? All right.
Sir.
As to the special called board meeting, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion for the special called board meeting for June 3rd.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the special called board meeting on June 3rd, 2019. All in favor? Opposed?
I'm abstaining. I was
abstention.
not present.
Okay.
Me.
Okay, that takes us down to items for action. Item 9, just consider approval of budget amendments.
Yes, there are 2 budget amendment, or actually 3 budget amendments that are in your packet. The first one is food service. This is to recognize the commodities. We get that number every year in June, so that's just a reflection between the cost and revenue. The second one is what we're required to do. This is the Medicare Part D that we've got to recognize. And amendment number 7, that is just, we every year, right before we finalize the budget, we've got to make sure that we've got adequate amount in each fund so that we don't go over in any function. Also, our auditor sometimes comes in and makes adjusting entries, and so this final one right here, it's not to spend any money, it's just to move money into functions. We move it from the salary amount to make sure if there's anyone that we have to recode or any that we have money, we have enough money in that function so that we don't go over and have an exception on our audit report.
I'll make the motion that we approve the budget amendments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll, all in favor? 7, opposed, none. Moves us down to item 9B, consider approval of TASB delegate and alternate delegate. Yes. Says you're the resource person, Mr. Cardone.
I think it's Ms. Villalpando, but Ms.
Okay.
Hanson.
I would like to nominate Ms. Villalpando if she's willing to serve again, as long as we, as a board, agree to pay for her travel and expenses to the conference, as she's representing the board.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate Ms. Villalpando. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? 7, opposed, none. And I think Ms. Hanson will be taking up travel budget separately.
An
but-
alternate, then?
The alternate?
Oh, an alternate delegate, all right. Yes, we need an alternate delegate. Do we have a nomination?
In the past, I think Ms. Halsey was the,
I appreciate it. I'm not interested in doing it right now.
I'll serve as an alternate delegate.
Okay. I'll nominate Ms. Cantu as the alternate delegate.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? 7, so none opposed. That takes care of that item. Item 9C, consider approval of 2019-2020 school board meeting calendar. Has everyone had an opportunity to review? Are there any issues or changes we
I
need to
have
make?
a question on the July. We've got it the 6th and the 20th, and that 6th is that first Monday that that the administration comes back. Maybe we could make that the 13th and the 20th, so that we allow staff time to prepare the agenda for the July meeting.
Okay, this is in July of 2020?
July of 2020, correct?
Okay. I mean, I would be inclined to, for the purposes of the calendar, remove the July agenda prep. We did that this year on the fly, and if we need to add it back in, we can always do it. But then we can add it around the administration schedule and return. If everybody would be up for that.
I'm good with removing it. It just seemed like the 6th is right when they're coming back, and that doesn't give administration enough time to put an agenda together.
Okay. Any
So-
other suggestions or changes?
So then we just leave July 20th for July. Good.
Correct. Ms. Hanson?
And, Mr. Cardona, could you remind us why we're doing January 21st, the Tuesday, instead of the Monday?
Martin Luther King.
And that's
Yeah,
a holiday.
okay.
It's a
MLK.
holiday. Okay. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew why we were postponing that day.
I'll make the motion to approve this calendar as corrected.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? 7, none opposed. Calendar is approved. That takes us down to item 9D, discussion and possible action regarding trustee travel budget for 2019 and 20. This was a board requested item, so there's no materials in the packet. I don't know, Ms. Cantu, was this something you put on, or was there a requesting trustee?
I know that the first time we heard the budget projections, I suggested to Mr. Cardona that he either eliminate or significantly reduce the travel budget and allocate it for the trustees, so that we would set the example and show that we're willing to cut money for ourselves as well as for cutting within the staff and administrative budget. So that's what I had thought we could do. I know that Mr. Arredondo agreed and brought it up at the last meeting. I think that we have to set the example from the top, that we're willing to cut ourselves as well as expecting the administration to cut in other areas. So that's why that's probably on there.
Okay, Mr. Arredondo, you
Yes, thank you, President McLaughlin, and thank you, Trustee Cantu. Yes, it was my understanding that this conversation had happened kind of off the dais, so I wanted to bring it to the board to have, a robust dialogue and conversation regarding that. I believe Trustee Hanson referenced it. I too would be supportive of allocating monies for our TASB delegate and the alternate to travel and have any justified reimbursement expenses reimbursed to them. But other than that, I think there's a more frugal way for us as trustees to receive our TEA and TASB mandated training. It had been said during agenda preparation that typically do the legislative update here at San Marcos High School, and I think there's other means for us to get that. So if a motion would be made today or whatever that would look like, I essentially would believe that it'd be that we only allocate funds to our TASB delegate and the alternate to travel and receive board training. And whatever monies would be spent for us to have Team of 8 training as well.
Okay,
So do you want a motion on that?
Well, I have a couple questions.
Okay,
I don't
you
know
have
if
a
anyone else does, but by travel budget, are you including conference attendance admission cost? You don't think that, I'm asking because I don't know, but you do not think the board should pay for those if a trustee chooses to go to the state conference or anything like that? A trustee other than the delegate?
Just because I put the item on the agenda, I guess when we're talking about budget projections in which we are not funding the purchases of school buses or electronic devices for students, again, although this line item is very small in comparison to some of our ongoing operational costs, again, I'd like to echo the comment made by Trustee Cantu, which was, I think it starts at the top, and if we just asked departments to, cut their budgets across the board by 10%, we can set that example as well. Now, I would agree that if there's trustees who would like to go travel and have, their hotel paid for or their conference expenses paid for, then that's fine. But as an individual trustee, I'll give up, I guess, my allocated expenses to be put back into the general fund. But if a motion was, I guess, asked for tonight, it would be to remove all funding for all of us, except for the TASB delegate and alternate, and then Team of 8 training.
And Ms. Hanson, and I know in past years you've not taken any money from the district to attend conferences. So when you attended summer SLI or something, did you pay the admission fee to the conference out of your personal pocket?
Yes.
That's how that's functioned in the past. And is the district able to forego paying mileage, or is that something that you're required to do by the state?
For trustees?
Yes.
I don't know.
Do we know? But is it legally required, or can we forego it by? Okay. Okay. I don't have a strong opinion on this myself. I think if we want training, that seems to be a good thing, and we can function better with some training. But but we can always approve a specific expenditure if it comes to us. So.
Well, and there are free conferences,
Mhm.
and I just, since they're San Antonio or Austin, I choose to drive back and forth.
Right. I know that if we really would like to cut trustee directed spending, we could take a look at our legal. But doing this doesn't preclude us from doing that next month. Is there any other? I think Ms. Halsey.
I would say that I'm in favor of, I think, all the training that is necessary for this board. Again, as I made the point at the workshop, that none of us are new board members, so we've received multiple rounds of training. As long as we fulfill the obligations to do the legislative update and the Team of 8, and we can do that efficiently and do it as a group, I'm totally for that. I think that if there is a special circumstance, I'm in favor of paying the TASB delegate fees, but if there's a special circumstance that somebody comes back with at some point this year and says there's this conference and it makes sense for me to attend it, I would be absolutely amenable to that. But I think, at least for this year, when we are asking everybody to take cuts, that it seems to me this is a more prudent way to move forward. So,
Ms. Costilla.
Mr. McLaughlin, thank you. I'm not opposed to reducing the amounts or deleting the entire amounts, but keep in mind that we do have sometimes at some point in time new trustees coming in, and the summer leadership conference was set up really for that purpose, for when you have elections in June or May, and then the trustees come in. I like for the board to keep that in mind, and maybe when they have new ones coming in, that they maybe make an exception to that and be able to send those to San Antonio, not necessarily to the TASB one, because the San Antonio is where they're going to get the training. And I think that it's good training that they get versus whatever the board might be able to give them here in-house. So keep that in mind, and I don't mind voting to delete whatever, but I think we need to be real cautious because we're making decisions for future boards, and maybe future boards might be different. So keep in mind the new trustees that might be coming in at some point in time, and I think it's good training for them to go to.
Point well taken.
Ms. Villapando.
I just want to add that coming up in February of this coming year, MOSBA will be in San Antonio, and all the trustees can attend we don't register, but we do, we are members of MOSBA through our maybe say corporate
District.
membership, district membership. So that training is entirely free except for the commute to, next year it'll be in San Antonio. It'll be in February.
Yeah.
I think it's in February.
Yes, it is.
But keep in mind that the school district pays that registration.
Well, I know, but it's not, it's
Yeah.
for all
Right,
kinds
for,
of
it's for
Something that
everybody,
we do need
but
to
there
be
is a
members.
cost for that, it's not free.
There is a cost, it's just not each individual board
Right.
member having to pay a registration.
in addition to what's already.
Yeah, in addition to
Yeah, and I agree with Ms. Cristia that new trustees, should we have one, really do need to attend Summer Leadership Institute because there's special programmed just for new trustees, and they can get the hours because they require more hours. So I'd like for us to be able to come back, and say, okay, we have new trustees, so let's allocate more money for that trustee.
Or I think
Should that happen.
potentially the motion could include that, since there's currently no new trustee, it would have no impact on the dollars in this year's budget, but we wouldn't have to get out ahead of it in April or be it, we don't even do our budget sometimes before those
summer.
registrations happen, and if there is a new trustee in 2020, I agree with my colleagues, so I would be inclined to support a motion that carved that out as well as the TASB delegate.
So then,
Mr. President.
Mr. Arredondo.
Thank you, President McLaughlin. I guess point of information, and I don't know if this is Mrs. Griffith or Superintendent Cardona. What is the fee for TASB's membership as well? Because I think there's a fee for TASB membership and then MOSBA. And my question is per Mr. McLaughlin's comment, I'm willing to craft a motion that reflects that we cover TASB membership expenses and MOSBA membership expenses in that reduced budget allocation. I just didn't know what that was, or if that matters, or if in the intent and spirit of the board, we would know that we'd be paying for that as well.
I think it comes out of a separate line item. Our trustee travel budget, which is, for frame of reference, from my recollection, $2,000 a year, and most of us spend way south of that, doesn't include the overall district membership fee. It's just hotel and transportation and our attendance at particular conferences. Is that right, Ms. Griffith? So, okay, Ms. Cantu, did you have another question?
I didn't have
Okay.
another question. I just think
else, or
if
I'll
we're
entertain
ready
a motion.
I think that we need to make a motion. I
Okay.
would like to make a motion to minimize the amount of money spent for trustee travel budget for 19-20, and that we provide a small amount that would be available for a new trustee being elected next May, in May of 2020, and also that we leave the fees in for TASB and MOSBA. That's a long motion.
Okay, so motion,
Well, second.
seconded by Mr. Arredondo. Any further discussion? All in favor? 7. Any opposed? None? Okay, that moves us to item 9E, which is consider approval of trustee finance committee. So I'll start, even though, because I made this addition at the agenda prep, and I didn't give a lot of frame of reference. So my concern was primarily that led to this, the budgetary process, and how it seems to get away from us, and through no fault of administration, we're not able to give input until the end, and then sometimes in a rush, and sometimes with some pressure, and then I can't, the way the current process functions, I cannot tell you as an individual trustee where every dollar goes. We get summary information. We've never been able to crack some of those categorical numbers out so that I would have a complete understanding in the 4 years that I've been through the budget process. So I thought that a subcommittee of the board might be able to go into that in more detail than we're able to do in an individual meetings. And so that was my thought behind this committee, subcommittee, or committee. But I also know that this is a very budget conscious time, and we've got real fiscal challenges, which is one reason I was willing to serve as president at this time, is so we could work through those things and keep a focus on them. And I don't know that we can create a committee of only 3 of us to deal with that. It seems like we're going to want to have 7 voices in that. So so that's where I am. I'm a little bit torn on my own proposal. We can try to dedicate agenda time in each meeting to deal with this as a group of 7, a group of 8, sorry, or deal with it in more detail in a committee. I just know how our committees work, and when we do it on important items, it tends to be, we have strong leaders in 7 positions, and we can do school naming through a committee, but the budget, I feel like everybody feels they have oversight responsibility. So I kind of fell out of love with the idea after I proposed it. But if someone else wants to take up the mantle and make a motion or pitch my old idea, have at it.
Can we
I just want to say that we used to have a finance committee, and I cannot remember. I cannot remember why. In fact, we had several committees. We had a building committee, we had a finance committee, and another. Do you remember?
Yeah, some time ago, and then one of the things that Mr. McLaughlin.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that I was sharing with some trustees that in the past, Kathy, I don't know whether you might recall, but we had a process to where in the beginning process of the budget building process that we had campuses make appearances to the board. You remember? They would outline their budget to us, their needs, and to the whole board as a whole, and then the whole board would have a discussion regarding the whole process, given information that was compiled together. I think at some point in time we might, whether it's that process or the committee process or whatever, I think that it's important because once we start dealing with budgets and people start making insinuations or personal attacks or misconceptions about where the budget and how it's being done, that a lot of times we really don't take the hits that we should be taking, because it's the board that needs to be involved in that budget process. So we can very consciously and respectfully interact and engage with community members that say, well, why did you spend so much? Well, I don't want to say, well, this is what staff recommended. I want to say, because this is what I heard. I heard it from the campus. I heard it from the need that was going from, and so I feel it's important, and as a whole, the board felt it was important too. So I'm much rather that I feel more comfortable in doing that than really saying this is something the administration recommended.
Manny?
Sure.
I think that all of us for this next few years are going to be very, very concerned with our budget, but we'll have to be careful not to overstep and try to micromanage the budget. I think that through our agenda preps, we have plenty of opportunities to have presentations, have discussions, have budget workshops, and we can schedule them more frequently instead of just at the budget time. That's my opinion as one trustee.
Ms. Halsey?
I am not interested in serving on the trustee finance committee, but I am very much in favor of one being formed if there are people who are interested in forming such a committee, and am happy to delegate that to work with the administration on doing that deep dive into the budget, and trust them fully to bring back all the materials and updates and recommendations to the rest of us. So I'm totally amenable to that.
Ms. Hanson?
My preference is for the board as a whole, because that's kind of why we went away from having committees, is that some people felt like they weren't getting the same information. So I would rather us as a whole, entire board, get the same information at the same time.
I think, having heard from my fellow trustees, I'd like to pull this.
Mr.
I'm
McLaughlin,
sorry.
before you do that, sorry. I guess, and I understand that I guess there was kind of an idea or rationale behind this prior to the election of officers, and I can understand how now that has changed. The need for this committee might not be as critical as it was prior to that. With that being said, it was referenced earlier in the meeting about looking at legal expenses incurred by the board and other cost savings. Just as a public request of information, the vendors and contracted services that have gone out for RFPs or RFQs in recent history and not so recent history, I'd like to see what that is. And as we go out to the taxpayers and constituents and say, this is what we pay for X services for X number of years, I'd like to be able to give more information regarding that. And so I think we have to look at every contracted service and vendor that we have and whether or not we're getting the most financially responsible bid on that service and with that vendor. So I hope if we want to do that as 7 trustees, I look forward to that. And President McLaughlin, you referenced it, is if we're tack on a budget workshop to agenda preparation, once a quarter or, every month, whatever that looks like, I'm amicable to that too. But I think as we look at 2020, 2021, or even this upcoming budget that we're about to approve before the month is over, we have $5 million to find somewhere to start operating in the budget. So I guess first request is that list of contracted services and vendors and when they went out for an RFP and RFQ and what those amounts are, and whether or not a future agenda item needs to be put on an agenda to go out and look at that again and put out RFPs and RFQs accordingly.
Okay, so having heard the input, I would like, with y'all's permission, to pull this until next month and spend some time with the superintendent and with Ms. Griffith so we could determine what the role of this committee would be, give it a little more definition maybe before we just create it so everybody knows what's going on, and also if we think and report back to you guys on whether I feel like we can accommodate this within agenda preps, as maybe had been suggested. So maybe not like a no now, but we'll revisit in August with y'all's permission.
Oh, sorry, I thought Trustee Hansen just said we were going to do it as 7. Was that not the idea?
Didn't hear
That the board was going to do this together, not
That was
a
my
committee?
preference.
Okay, well, I want to echo Trustee Hansen's request of
understand.
doing it as a board.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. We'll call Ms. Cantu the second. She's been very eager. All in favor? Do I hit this thing?
Yeah.
Yes, hit it.
Oh man, 7:02.